Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be discussing moral obligation and assisting people in need. This video will contain two segments, in which one I will be debating whether individuals have a moral obligation versus the government, which will be my second segment. And now, in the first segment, I will be discussing whether individuals have a moral obligation or not to assist people in need. What are the pros, what are the cons, advantages, disadvantages to assisting people in need. So, I just quickly brainstormed over here some main reasons as to why or why not we ought to be morally obligated to assist people in need. So let's go first over the pros. Altruism. Altruism is just the ideology that you just give from your own incentive. You just do it because you want to, and this is pro because it's good to give to somebody else. It inspires generosity. It kind of spreads around once you assist somebody in need. That means that other people will see you doing the same thing, and then they will start being more altruistic because they observe throughout the community in altruistic behavior. And then once a specific area becomes more altruistic, then it like spreads over and over. Hopefully it spreads over and over until it reaches the level of a nation and such, and then it just goes all over the place. So making morally obligatory, it just supports the ideology of altruism. It's good to help others. We support a value, so I don't see why not. Let's just help because helping is good. It's really, we're just helping each other, and then again, this kind of somehow shapes the society in a more positive way because compassion cures more than condemnation. Moving on, another reason as to pro is just essentially the ideology of utilitarianism. Most of the things that I will be discussing here may be cross-applied to government. Utilitarianism is essentially the ideology of maximizing welfare, maximizing happiness, trying to have the most good for the most amount of people. It's obviously under utilitarian philosophy that we ought to assist people in need because we increase happiness of the people, because if you help, you become more happy, and then if you get help, you tend to be more happy, I guess, because you're happy that you received something. So it kind of moves on, and utilitarianism kind of encourages this moral obligation to assist people in need, because if you make it morally obligatory, people will obey this specific action, and the action of assisting people in need is good. It increases the welfare of the community, hence assisting people is good from a morally obligatory perspective. Moving on, this is an argument that I've seen in an essay, that who cares whether it's morally obligatory or not? The people that receive the help are just happy that are actually getting help, regardless of this help is intended in a specific way, in order to, have like a gain for the individual that assists or not. They don't care. All they care about is just getting some assistance because they're in need. And this goes hand to hand with utilitarianism. Again, it increases happiness, so it's good. And then, as I mentioned before, if somebody becomes altruistic and this behavior is being observed and it's being rewarded by the society in some way or another, then other people tend to do the same thing. And in the end, this is good for overall the community because we help each other. Helping is good. It's kind of this really pink world idealistic ideology, I guess, to help people. But then again, we ought to pay attention also to the first part of the question as to whether it's morally obligatory or not. And this is where the con kind of tends to win more on the philosophical side of the arguments, because again, the ontology tends to be more strict, and it tends to emphasize more on values rather than just this idealistic side in which way we just help each other and it's all good. So let's take a quick look at a con side. One of the main reasons as to why it shouldn't make it morally obligatory, because once it's obligatory, that means you do it because you have to. If you do it because you have to, that means you diminish the value of it, and by helping somebody else, you're being charitable, and by making charity obligatory, that means you diminish the value of charity. And then the pro side would say, who cares if we diminish the value? As long as we help people, that's good, it increases utility. So this is where this imbalance of arguments kind of goes back and forth. So this is what I'm looking for from you guys. PMs and messages, comments, to let me know whether one side wins or the other, and why, obviously. Another main reason as to being it morally obligatory is bad is because we can't force somebody to help. It sounds absurd. It's just like saying, My plan as a governor is to inflict happiness upon people. It makes no sense. Inflicting has a negative connotation, and so does obligation. Making it obligatory essentially means that it's bad. Essentially, it means that you have to. You do it as a chore. And then again, this ties back to we diminish the value of it, so this is not good. We can't do this to people, to individuals. We can't make it more obligatory. Whether you want to help or not should be up to you. Nobody should make you be obligatory. And this leads us to our next point. Obligation means that there's some sort of agent or authority that reinforces this obligation, and this is where again you can draw different tangents. Who is this agent, if any? People will argue that just because there's an obligation, that doesn't mean there ought to be an agent. It can't be some sort of like natural self-feeling that the agent of making something obligatory can be just your own. It can be your own self. So you make yourself like you obligate yourself to help people. It sounds kind of weird, but people argue that, and it's somewhat a decent argument, I guess. And then again, obligation also implies punishment. If you don't do this and you disobey this obligation, there ought to be a punishment in order to restore the balance, because obligation, I guess, is based on a restorative justice system, and if you don't obey the obligation, that means you ought to be punished. So yeah, you can't punish somebody for not wanting to help others. This is not fair. This is not cool. These are the main reasons why some people believe that it should not be morally obligatory to help others. And now, once we've briefly analyzed some of the main arguments for pros and cons, let's address another specific issue that I've seen around, which is whether generic and specific. By this I mean whether this kind of need is a generic need, as in we should always have a moral obligation to assist somebody in need, or in just specific situations we should or we should not make it morally obligatory. As for example, this was one of my arguments during debates. I was saying that diseases obviously spread around the world. It's not like they stay within one national boundary, so therefore we should all have an obligation to try to preserve this global health, try to encourage people to take vaccines and use antibiotics and invest into medicine in terms of countries as well as a global policy. The reason why this is good is because we stop the spread of disease, or at least we kind of slow it down. By slowing down the spread of disease, we increase not only the healthiness of the people, but we also increase like the happiness of the people. Obviously, if you're sick, you're not as happy as if you are healthy. So therefore, we not only increase utility by making it morally obligatory for people to encourage medicine, but we also assist people in need. And I was arguing that we're all in need because we're all in need in health. So therefore we're actually all in need, and we're all individuals, so therefore we all have a moral obligation to not only assist ourselves in this framework, but also to assist each others by taking vaccines and promoting medicine, following the medical procedures, not just complain that, oh my gosh, this vaccine gives you ADHD or H1N1 or some sort of other disease. I guess ADHD is a psychological thing. I apologize for that. So yeah, try to be more tolerant with diseases. Stop putting your religious beliefs in front of these, because overall it helps people by making yourself healthy. And then more of a generic example would be just in every situation to assist people in need. It sounds absurd. We can't always help each other in need, because then we create an economic imbalance, I guess. You can't just constantly help others, because then you have no money for yourself. As for example, you make $2,000 more than average, I guess, in your country, but then you have a moral obligation to assist somebody else in need of money. So you have to donate those $2,000 into some sort of specific account, which kind of goes, and this money travels towards somebody that has the need of it. And then the cons, I would say this is unfair, this is not cool. By taking away hard-earned money, that means you encourage socialism. Socialism is bad. Look at Soviet Russia, blah blah. And then the pros, I would say, no, look at the modern China. They're not strictly socialist, but they're kind of encouraging the socialist government because it overall, I guess, works one way or another. This is a different debate. Social structure will be diminished or changed, more specifically, if you make it morally obligatory. So again, this is the first segment, which I will end now. The question is whether individuals have a moral obligation or not to assist people in need. Look at the pros, look at the cons. Pros just say, well, it's good to help people and increases the amount of happiness. So happiness is good. It makes people obviously happy, increases labor, I guess, all kind of stuff. Then the con says no, helping people bad from a obligatory perspective, because Obligation implies punishment, it implies an authority figure. We don't have that in terms of morality because we ought to debate morality from a secular point of view. Uh, we cannot force people to help. That's absurd. That makes no sense. You can't just imagine a world in which we have an obligation to help others, and if we don't, we're punished. This again should not ever happen. And then we diminish the value of charity, which is another terrible thing because once we diminish the value of something, then that means we're more likely to diminish the value of other things like life, and then who knows what else is going to happen to our community. So therefore, it's good or bad for individuals, just as people in need. Let me know. And now I'll go ahead and talk about the government. The link to this will be somewhere. All right, peace.